Hi, everybody. This is Jay Shaw, and I'm answering a question that my friend asked me. The question is, with the emergence of the coronavirus, should we rethink globalization and our dependence on a few select countries for commerce? Any moment is a good moment to rethink anything because nothing is fixed. We think that we have a fixed mold of reality, a fixed way that things work. And for a long time, that could have been true, but things are always changing. So, with as much economic progress as the world has seen in the last 100 years, and I'm using the number 100 specifically, or 102 or so forth, because that was the last pandemic, things have been steadily progressing. There have been, markets have gone up, production has gone up, there have been recessions, things have gone up again, gone down, things have gone up again, gone down. And the overall trajectory has been up, 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 as far as economics go. This coronavirus is unprecedented in all of our lifetimes because never has a disease so fundamentally upheaved just about everything. It's not, there have been wars that have been even total wars, like World War I or World War II. They were total wars, but they still did only affect not every single country. I don't know how much Africa was affected by World War I or World War II, at least during the actual conflict. This virus is affecting literally everything and is forcing everybody to rethink everything. We're hopefully we're going to figure out how to be better at handling these things in the future. Economies all over the place have in large part slowed down or closed down as people are being forced to stay home, and you see that the very basis of all economics, which is transactions between people, has been fundamentally stymied or stopped. Like, the most basic jobs can just disappear because nobody's there to buy donuts because they could have lost money because their job got lost because someone else isn't paying them. And the entire balance of everything is changing. So with regard to globalization, it's no different, which is to say that, on a pro-globalization side, when you can outsource services to people that can do it at cheaper rates, it means that the people within your country can get more quantity of things, spread it around more easily. People with lower incomes have access to goods they wouldn't have otherwise because it's cheaper. But at the same time, you're trading the actual capacity of making those things to other countries. So you're getting more and you're getting it cheaper, but you're not the one making it. And that can be a good thing provided everything is working well, that relations between nations are good. But it can be a bad thing if, say, the country that is making your stuff doesn't want to make it anymore, or they now want to chokehold you in a trade deal, or it could be anything. They want to go to war with you. It could be anything. And then the base from which you get your stuff has been cut off, and then you're put at a point of dependency. So it's always a worthy thing to think about, and the coronavirus is making us all think about a lot of things we might not have thought about before. I mean, especially making us be more germ conscious. Everyone's becoming very focused on what they're touching, people that are sneezing, and so forth. So globalization in a larger sense too, in an American sense, 50, 60, 70 years ago, America was the number one manufacturer in the world. And they made cars, toasters, microwaves, laundry machines, whatever was made, more or less, most of the manufacturing was done in America, or at least the most significant bulk of it. As globalization has continued and trade has opened up thanks to better ways of shipping, more economic openness among many nations, better communication, other countries have started to produce some of the things that we used to produce. And America's turned much more into a service-based economy. People, like doctor services, lawyer services, financial services, software services. The actual stuff that we make is normally made overseas somewhere. Again, the benefit of that is that it's done at a cheaper rate. And for the people In the other countries that do it, these countries generally don't have as much money, and the people who do it work at a much lower wage than an American would, because the standard of living and the standard of income that they're accustomed to is helped by the fact that they can now do this work, albeit at a much lower rate than an American would be paid. So, again, the benefit of that is that all of us get more things, and the country that's producing this stuff, they build a manufacturing base themselves. They can probably manufacture for their own country then too more easily, and they get money coming in as well. So it's a mutual exchange, and both countries benefit. But again, when relations go sour, things can go bad, because it could be a thing that makes us realize that we don't want to engage in war and conflict. War and conflict are very bad for trade. They're good for ammunition manufacturing, but they're not good for economy in any way besides that, more or less. The World War II manufacturing boost brought the U.S. out of the Great Depression, but that was only because the U.S. had nothing going on at that time for so many years, and it needed something very shocking and galvanizing to really get everybody behind a common cause and create things that were really needed, which were arms and ammunition and so forth at that time. But there's no shortage of that stuff now, so war is not good for trade or economy. So being more connected with somebody makes it more important that you're on good terms with them. So all the globalization could actually decrease war, and that could be a big reason why there's not been a World War III, and very likely won't be, because the world is so interconnected. It would destroy so many people's livelihoods, much more than it would have before, when 100 years ago, 70 years ago, you're not as connected with people from other countries. So for better or for worse, you don't suffer as they suffer, but you also don't benefit when they benefit. The more globalization there is, probably the more interested we're going to need to be in the welfare of the people in the countries with which we're trading. It can't be, it's nobody's ability to affect or change what goes on somewhere else, but given that you're more closely connected with them, it is more important that things are going well in other places. So with regard to what globalization has done in a negative sense for Americans, a lot of the manufacturing folks, mostly who lived in, not mostly, but many of whom lived in the Midwest and in more rural areas, like places like Scranton, there's Allentown, there's a Billy Joel song called Allentown. These folks, in the last few decades, they had the basis from which their societies were built, which is manufacturing, just taken from underneath them. The factories closed down. Whatever they were making got vanished, and they'd have to adapt and either move to different cities, change their way of life, find new skills, or not somehow. And it was very difficult for them. And a lot of these communities have not recovered from the loss of all the manufacturing jobs. So what coronavirus is showing is that basically it's a good thing. I mean, there's pros and cons of both, right? Like, with globalization, people will get more things and get them cheaper, but you're reliant on other countries, and the manufacturing base in your own country is going to go away. Without globalization, you're probably going to be paying higher prices for what you make, and more workers may be tied up with manufacturing jobs when they'd otherwise be forced to do other jobs that require more training. But at the same time, you're more protected against any global downturn. You're more protected against issues with other countries arising, and you're more self-sufficient, and that's always a good thing. So I don't have a definitive answer about what should be done, but it's important, before anybody takes any action on anything, to understand it as thoroughly as possible from as many angles as possible, And that's my pro and con argument for globalization. With regard to coronavirus, it's just important to realize too that reality is not fixed. I know I have two friends who they've had some elders in their family die in the last 2 weeks, and neither of them were confirmed cases of coronavirus. It could have been for either of them. They didn't. I guess we don't know, but you expect reality to be one way, but things change. The whole world is in flux at all times, and something like a hurricane, which is a combination of essentially water, which is like rain, and wind, so air and water, can ravage a city. It can completely upheave everything that humans have made, and it certainly changes the way they live, at least for the days upcoming to the hurricane and perhaps in the aftermath. So humans don't control everything in the world. It may appear that they do, and as far as human society is concerned, we certainly are able to control a lot with medication, with airplanes, with a lot of things, but we still must be aware of the fact that we live in a natural world and that there are forces beyond our control to which we must obey, essentially. With coronavirus, everything is changed very quickly because in this physical world there's something there that could be a threat. It's the same thing with the hurricane or anything else. So whatever ways our minds try to fixate on reality or affix to something, those are just predictions in the anticipation of our mind, and they're not necessarily going to be correct. And it's important for us to be able to flex and move with the times, change as we need to, and make the best decisions as per what the time calls for. So with regard to everything, my two friends whose elders and their families have passed away, they probably didn't think this was going to happen, but it has. And this is the new reality. So those are my thoughts about globalization and uncertainty, which is really what everything is. We have our best predictions to make things as certain as possible, and a lot of predictions are good, but nothing is absolute. So that's what I have to say with regard to coronavirus and globalization.